Before we start, I would want you to hit that red subscribe button so you never miss out on any of our videos. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to Super Top 10s. When politicians, it is often a source of embarrassment, as well as a source of historical change. Sometimes their mistakes lead to disaster. Other times they simply become amusing anecdotes. But immunity from errors of judgment eludes everyone, and always has. Sometimes error leads to ridicule, sometimes human casualties, sometimes it has created landmarks, and sometimes it has destroyed them. With that in mind, here are 10 of the worst political mistakes of all time. William Seward leaves the country.
John Wilkes Booth had planned a triple assassination, not simply to kill Lincoln.
Leading up to the 1860 presidential election, the former New York governor was the Republican Party's frontrunner for the nomination. So confident was Seward in his selection, in fact, that for several months prior to the party's 1860 convention, he traveled abroad, making stops throughout Europe and Asia. While in Beirut, he even purchased a few Arabian horses. After returning to America, Seward found that a lawyer from Illinois, named Abraham Lincoln, had slipped in and gained the party's support. Seward's ill-timed trip wasn't the only reason he lost. His outspoken nature and vehement opposition to slavery gained him enemies amongst Republicans, but it certainly didn't help matters. In the end, he fared quite well, becoming Secretary of State under Lincoln. He also made another far-flung gamble, but one that paid off handsomely: the 1867 purchase of Alaska from Russia. Number 2, Napoleon institutes the Continental system. Like any great conflict, the Napoleonic Wars weren't just fought with swords and cannons. Damages were also inflicted using trade orders, blockades, and decrees. After Britain issued a naval blockade of France in 1806, French ruler Napoleon Bonaparte responded by prohibiting all allies and nations under his control, which by then included most of Europe, from trading with England. If France couldn't defeat Britain on the high seas, it would put the country's economy in a stranglehold. Of course, Britain's naval superiority allowed it to maneuver around Napoleon's land-based enforcement of the Continental system. It also established alternate trade routes with South America. France's efforts to stop the British taxed its military and created conflicts with its own allies, most notably Russia, setting up Napoleon's ill-fated invasion in the winter of 1812. Number 3, China withdraws from the world. By the 15th century, China's Ming dynasty had become a global power, with trade routes reaching across the world. Rather than continue its growth, however, Ming authorities ordered all ships and merchants back to the homeland, the first in a string of isolationist policies that lasted until the 1800s. The orders were due in part to a growing adherence to Confucian philosophy, which promoted self-sufficiency and the evils of material wealth. China also wanted to shore up its defenses against the Mongols and against pirates that had plagued its eastern shores for years. The impact of withdrawing from the world stage was predictable. China fell behind in everything from diplomacy to technology. Its vast size meant it was still a powerful country, but isolationism cut it off from the cultural currents it had once so adamantly embraced. Number 4, William Henry Harrison's inaugural speech. Not only was the 1841 speech overly long and boring, but the 9th president delivered it outdoors on a sub-freezing afternoon, sans coat, hat, or gloves. Harrison was no stranger to bad weather, having worked as a farmer and served as a soldier. Even so, the decision to brave the elements was a boneheaded one that would prove disastrous, as he soon developed pneumonia. Doctors tried the era's usual remedies, including bleeding the president with leeches and trying to draw out the disease with heated cups. They also resorted to a Native American cure that involved live snakes. It was all in vain. Harrison died after just 1 month in office, making him the shortest serving president in U.S. history. Number 5, surrendering before the battle.
Of course, we also anticipate that another totally different, very serious item will be heading the Senate's way.
The midterm elections of 2014 gave the Republicans control of the Senate that they should have won in 2010. But even before the new members took their oath of office, then Senate Majority Leader-elect Mitch McConnell promised never to trigger a government shutdown. That effectively took the sharpest arrow out of the GOP's congressional quiver, and again relieved the greatest pressure the Republicans could have exercised against Obama. Number 6, Voreqe Bainimarama snubs Medvedev for his aide. Voreqe Bainimarama, the Prime Minister of Fiji and the man from whom the term Bainimarama Republic originates, caused rather an embarrassing moment for his Russian host when he visited Moscow for a diplomatic meeting. As may be seen in the official videos of the encounter, Bainimarama's outstretched hand somehow managed to miss Russian PM Dmitry Medvedev despite the Russian PM putting out his own palm for the greeting. Instead, Bainimarama clearly turned away from Medvedev and shook hands with the latter's 2 aides, prompting the snub Medvedev to try to hide his embarrassment by acting as though he had extended his arm to brush imaginary dust off of it. Number 7, George Bush Sr. vomits on his host's lap. Admittedly, he could hardly have helped it if he was feeling ill, but Bush Sr. made one of the best-known faux pas in international politics when he puked on Japanese PM Kiichi Miyazawa during a diplomatic banquet. Luckily for Japanese-American relations, he wasn't doing it to act out his stance on a geopolitical issue. Bush Sr. was allegedly ill with intestinal flu at the time. The incident gained some popularity in Japan for a while though, as a new word for vomiting entered Japanese slang shortly afterward, bushu suru, or to do a bush. Number 8, Michelle Obama Obama touches the Queen. The Queen of England is untouchable in many situations, literally so. Formal protocol for meeting the Queen dictates that you shouldn't touch her beyond a polite handshake.
What is astounding is the picture of the Queen with her arm round Michelle Obama.
So when First Lady Michelle Obama broke the rule by throwing an arm around Her Majesty, the British media was understandably shocked. It was a breach of one of the classic rules of conduct. Fortunately for Miss Obama, the Queen herself seemed to take it in stride. It wasn't the first time she had to suffer contact, after all. Former Aussie Prime Ministers John Howard and Paul Keating have both been accused of touching the Queen. And Canadian cyclist Louis Garneau is known to have done the same thing when he put an arm around her for a personal photo. Still, one would think that the first two, as well as Miss Obama herself, as political figures, would have been more mindful to royal etiquette than a former cyclist simply hoping for a nice keepsake. Number 9, nominating Mitt Romney for president. Despite the failure to grab the Senate, the GOP was still riding strong anti-Obamacare sentiment and voter frustration over the slow recovery from the Great Recession. Much of this was fueled by the Tea Party movement, which added a rare Republican grassroots element to the GOP. When you think about it now, all of that made former Mitt Romney an extremely odd choice for the Republican nomination for president in 2012. He embodied the establishment GOP in almost every way. Romney had years as a hedge fund manager at Bain Capital on his resume at a time when most Americans were still blaming Wall Street for the nation's economic woes. Worst of all, his universal health coverage plan enacted while he was governor of Massachusetts looked eerily like Obamacare. In fact, Romney Care was seen as one of the models the crafters of the Affordable Care Act used when they wrote the law. The GOP wanted to put up a candidate who invigorated its anti-Obamacare and increasingly anti-establishment base. They couldn't have missed the mark much more than they did with Mitt Romney. Number 10, Schröder puts out the Holocaust Victims Memorial flame. In 2000, the German Chancellor Gerhard Schröder was visiting Israel when he made one of the worst faux pas a German official can do all in the country. As all foreign dignitaries in Israel do, he went to pay his respects at the Yad Vashem Holocaust Memorial, guided by Israeli PM Ehud Barak. An eternal flame there burns for the 6 million Jews slain by the Nazis. Unfortunately, when Schröder went to turn the flame up, he turned the switch the wrong way, extinguishing the flame. Barak tried to fix the flame, but was unsuccessful. In the end, it took an employee of the Yad Vashem Memorial to light it again with a gas lighter. This brings us to the end of our video. I hope you enjoyed it. Hit like if you did, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any of our videos in the future. Also, watch the 2 videos that are on your screen because I'm sure you'll love them. With that, I'll see you in the next video.